My name is Evelyn. I'm 67. And 3 days after I buried my husband, my daughter-in-law tried to take my house in front of the whole church. If you've ever seen people change the second the funeral ends, you'll understand why my hands were shaking. Because she didn't just come for money. She came with a secret. Harold and I were married for 42 years. He wasn't the kind of man who gave big speeches or posted love notes. But every morning, no matter what, he made my coffee the same way. 2 spoons of sugar, a dash of cinnamon, and a quiet kiss on my temple like it was a promise. Then one Tuesday, I found him in his recliner. The TV was still on. His hand rested on the arm like he was only taking a quick nap. Like I was going to fuss at him for dozing off again. He didn't wake up. The doctors said heart attack, quick, clean. There is nothing clean about losing the person who remembers your whole life without needing to ask. I floated through the funeral like a ghost in a black dress. People hugged me. People cried. People said, he's in a better place. And I nodded like my heart wasn't splitting right down the middle. And then came the church luncheon, the part nobody warns you about. The food, the small talk, the paper plates, the way grief has to sit at a folding table and pretend it has manners. I was holding a paper cup of sweet tea when I saw Kendra stand up, my daughter-in-law. She cleared her throat like she'd practiced it, and my son, her husband, was right beside her, staring at the floor like it had answers written on it. That's when I knew something ugly was coming. Kendra smiled the kind of smile people use when they want to look reasonable. Before everyone leaves, she said, loud enough for the whole room, I need to say something important about Harold's estate. My stomach tightened so fast it felt like my ribs moved. I hadn't even taken off my funeral earrings yet. I hadn't slept a full night. And suddenly we were talking about money. Right there between the ham, slices and the potato salad, Kendra lifted a folder. Thick, neat, tabbed like a school project. Her nails were freshly done. Her eyes were dry. Then she said it. Harold had another child, and that child is entitled to part of what he left behind. The room went quiet, but not in a respectful way. In a hungry way. I blinked slow, like my eyes were full of sand. My throat wouldn't work. Kendra turned and pointed, toward the back of the room. A young woman sat there, maybe late 20s. Pretty, stiff posture, lips pressed tight like she was holding something in. This is Marissa, Kendra announced. She's Harold's daughter. For a second, I couldn't even hear my own breathing. And then Kendra delivered the part she really came for. She looked straight at me and said, So Evelyn, we're going to do this the right way. Marissa deserves her share. She tapped the folder like it was a gavel. And that means the house needs to be split. Half should be set aside. Half my house. The house Harold and I bought when we were young and broke. The house where we patched the roof ourselves. The house where his muddy work boots still sat by the back door, like he might walk in any minute. Kendra reached into the folder and pulled out a document. A copy of Harold's will, she said. Signed. All those faces turned to me, waiting for me to cry, or scream or collapse right there by the lemonade. I opened my mouth to speak, but what came out was small and polite. Oh, I see. I pressed my lips together hard, because the truth is, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because Kendra and Marissa had no idea what Harold and I did 2 years earlier when he got unusually serious about paperwork, and why this little performance was about to fall apart. So I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just held my sweet tea with steady hands and said the calmest thing I've ever said in my life. Okay, let's do it the right way. Then I reached into my purse, and that's when the room finally started to change. I walked out of that church hall like my legs belonged to someone else. I hugged a few people, nodded at a few soft I'm so sorry faces, kept my voice gentle, because that's what women my age were trained to do. Smile, swallow it, don't make a scene. But the second I closed my car door, my hands started shaking so hard I couldn't get the key into the ignition. And it wasn't just grief. It was that sick, crawling feeling you get when you realize somebody has been planning something. While you were busy mourning, I sat there in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel until my breathing slowed down. Then I whispered, like Harold could hear me anyway. Did you see this coming, sweetheart? And that's when a memory hit me so hard, it felt like someone tapped my shoulder. 2 years ago, Harold came home from a doctor's appointment looking tired in a way I didn't like. He eased himself into the kitchen chair and said, real quiet, Evelyn, I need to get something in writing. I remember laughing a little because it sounded so serious. In writing about what? I asked. He didn't explain. He just said, trust me. But here's what I did know, what I'd always known. Harold had a vasectomy 33 years ago. After my second pregnancy nearly took me out. We didn't announce it. We didn't discuss it with family. That was our business. So when Kendra stood up in that fellowship hall claiming Harold had a secret daughter in her 20s, my grief didn't disappear. But my disbelief grew teeth, because either my husband had lied to my face for 33 years, or someone was lying right now, and I already knew who had no problem doing that. I drove home with the radio off. No music, no comfort, just the sound of my own thoughts, sharp and ugly. When I stepped into the house, it smelled like Harold's aftershave and old wood and the lemon cleaner I use on Sundays. His jacket was still hanging by the door, and for half a second, my mouth almost formed his name like it was a normal day. But it wasn't normal, and it wasn't over. Because that folder Kendra held up like a trophy, it wasn't just rude, it was a warning. So I did the one thing I've always done when life turns mean. I went to where Harold kept the truth. In our closet, behind a stack of folded quilts, was a small metal lockbox we jokingly called the grown-up drawer. Deed. Papers, insurance, the boring stuff nobody cares about until someone tries to take your home. My fingers fumbled with the key, but I got it open. And that's when my stomach dropped. A plain manila envelope sat right on top, with Harold's handwriting across the front. Evelyn, if anything gets strange. I didn't remember that envelope being there. Not at all. I sat down on the bedroom floor, still in my black funeral shoes, and slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a neat stack of papers. A copy of our deed, a will, official-looking, stamped, signed, witnessed, and a medical letter with Harold's name at the top. But the thing that made my chest cave in wasn't the paperwork. It was the note sitting on top, written in that steady hand I'd held for 4 decades. Ev, if someone ever claims I've got a secret kid, they're lying. You'll know what to do. Call Mr. Redding, and don't you let anybody rush you while you're hurting. I covered my mouth because the sob came fast, hot and humiliating. He was gone, and he was still protecting me. I wiped my face, took one breath, and forced myself to look at the medical letter again. It wasn't vague. It wasn't a guess. It was confirmation, dates, signatures, the kind of proof that doesn't care who's yelling in a church hall. And right then, something else clicked in my head. Kendra didn't bring that folder because she was curious. She brought it because she thought she had already won. So I didn't call my son first. I didn't call my sister. I didn't call Kendra. I called the name Harold wrote down. Mr. Redding, our attorney. When the receptionist answered, I kept my voice as calm as I could manage and said, my husband was buried today, and someone just tried to take my home with a so-called daughter and a will. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, Mrs. Harper, can you come in first thing tomorrow morning? I looked back down at Harold's envelope, and that's when I noticed the part that made my blood go cold. Harold didn't write if anything gets strange. He wrote when, and the next morning, I found out exactly why. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, like my body didn't trust sleep anymore. I made coffee out of habit, then just stood there staring at Harold's empty chair until the cup went cold. And Kendra's voice kept replaying in my head. Half of your house should be set aside. Not, are you okay? Not, how can we help? Just numbers, like I was a bank account with a heartbeat. By 8 o'clock, I was driving downtown with Harold's envelope on the passenger seat like it could break if I hit a pothole. Mr. Redding's office sat inside an old brick building. The floors creaked. The hallway smelled like paper and dust. The kind of place where people don't come to chat. They come because something is wrong. When I walked in, his receptionist didn't smile like normal. She just looked at me and said, he's ready for you, Mrs. Harper. That alone told me this wasn't going to be a quick visit. Mr. Redding stood as soon as I entered. Silver hair, kind eyes, calm voice. Evelyn, he said softly, I'm sorry about Harold. That simple sentence almost cracked me in half, but I held it together because I had one job now. Protect what Harold and I built. I sat down and slid the envelope across his desk. Then I told him everything, the church hall, Kendra's folder, the surprise daughter, the way the room watched me like I was supposed to fall apart on command. Mr. Redding didn't interrupt once. He just listened, hands folded, face steady. When I finished, he asked one question. Did she give you a copy of the will? No, I said. She wouldn't. She just waved it around. He nodded once. Okay. Then he did something that made my stomach tighten. He stood up and quietly shut his office door. He came back to his chair and said low and clear, "Evelyn, I want you to hear me. If someone is claiming a surprise child and using a new will to pressure you, this may not be a family argument." He paused. "This may be an attempt to take property that isn't theirs." The word hit me hard, not because I didn't believe it, but because hearing it out loud made it real. He opened Harold's envelope and started reading through the papers carefully, like each page mattered. Deed copy, estate papers. Then the medical letter. His eyes stopped there for a moment, and I watched his expression change, not shocked, not dramatic, just certain. "Harold left you what you need," he said. My throat tightened. He knew this was coming. Mr. Redding didn't answer right away. He just reached into a cabinet and pulled out a folder, already labeled with our last name. "Harold came in last year," he said. "Alone, very focused. He told me he wanted everything clean, no confusion, no fighting." I blinked. "He never told me." "He said he didn't want to worry you," Mr. Redding replied. Then he slid a document toward me. "This is the will I have on file, the valid one." I leaned in, and my eyes scanned the lines like they might move. And there it was, plain as day. "The house goes to Evelyn Harper. Full ownership, no split, no half set aside, no strange new heir showing up at a luncheon." My eyes burned, and I had to press my tongue to the roof of my mouth to keep myself steady. Mr. Redding leaned forward. "Now listen," he said. "If Marissa truly believed Harold was her father, the normal path is court. A petition, a paternity test." He let that sit for a beat, not a surprise announcement at a funeral lunch. I swallowed. "So why do it like that?" "Because pressure works," he said simply. "Grief makes people easy to push, and public embarrassment makes people sign things they don't understand." My hands clenched in my lap. "I didn't sign anything." "No," he agreed. "And that's good." Then he added, quiet but firm, "That may also be why they escalate next." That sentence landed like a stone. He slid a notepad toward himself and spoke like he was giving steps, not comfort. "Here's what you do. You don't sign anything. You don't meet Kendra alone. You don't argue in public again." He looked me in the eye. "You let me do the talking. I'll request a copy of whatever document she's using. If it's fake, we handle it the right way." I nodded, even though my heart was hammering. I stood up to leave, and that's when Mr. Redding said something that stopped me cold. "Evelyn, Harold left me a note." My stomach dropped. "A note?" "He told me to give it to you only if something like this happened." Mr. Redding opened the file, took out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to me. Harold's handwriting. The first line made my breath catch. "If Kendra isn't acting alone." My fingers went numb, because in my mind, I could already see my son's face in that church hall, eyes down, silent, letting her speak. And suddenly I wasn't only scared about my house. I was scared about what was happening inside my own family. I unfolded the paper the rest of the way, and when I read the next sentence, I understood why Harold wrote when, not if, when. I didn't open Harold's note in Mr. Redding's office. Not right away. I held it like it was hot, because that first line, Kendra isn't acting alone," was already enough to squeeze the air out of my chest. When you've loved someone for decades, you learn a special kind of fear. The fear that one more sentence could change how you see your own family. So I waited until I was back in my car. I sat with both hands on the steering wheel. The paper trembled a little between my fingers. And I told myself, quiet and firm, "Read it. You can handle the truth." Then I unfolded it. Harold wrote the way he always did, plain, direct, like he was leaving instructions. If Kendra ever brings up money after I'm gone, don't argue. Don't plead. Just get help. She's been talking to someone about the house. I heard her in the hallway last month. She said, once he's gone, we'll finally get what we're owed. I don't know who we is, but it isn't just her. Trust your gut. I trust you. I read it once, then again. By the third time, something in me settled into place. Grief was still there, but now I could see straight. Because Kendra hadn't just embarrassed me at a church luncheon. She had a plan, and Harold heard enough to know it wasn't a one-person plan. That one word, we, kept echoing in my head, and I hated where my mind went next. Because the most terrifying we I could imagine was the person I raised. My son, David. I drove home and didn't even take my coat off. I walked straight into the kitchen, saw Harold's old landline on the counter, and grabbed it. My hands were still shaky, and for some reason that phone felt steadier than my cell. I dialed David, He answered on the third ring, cheerful in a way that didn't match the day. "Mom, hey, how are you holding up?" There it was, that bright, normal voice people use when they want to skip the hard part. "I'm not calling to talk about my feelings," I said. My own voice came out calmer than I expected. "I need you to come over, today." Silence. Then he said, careful, "Is this about what Kendra said?" So he knew. Of course he knew. "Come over," I said again. Alone. Another pause, long enough that I could hear him thinking. "Okay," he said finally. "After work?" I hung up and stood, there staring at the sink like I'd forgotten what kitchens were for. Because if David was involved, if he'd helped her even a little, I didn't know what that would do to me. Hours passed slow, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went looking. I pulled out my old laptop. Harold used to call it the stubborn brick. And I typed Marissa's name into every search bar I could think of. I used the town name too. At first it was junk. Blurry results, private pages. Then I found her. A profile photo, Marissa at a beach bar, holding a drink, smiling like life was simple. And right under that picture was a comment from a woman whose name I recognized immediately. Kendra's mother. Same name as the Christmas cards. Same face I'd seen at family dinners. Her comment was short, ordinary looking. But it made my stomach drop anyway. "So proud of you." Proud of her? Why would Kendra's mother be proud of Harold's secret daughter? I clicked deeper, heart thumping harder with every scroll. I checked old photos, tags, mutual friends. And then I saw it. A family picture from 8 years ago, Thanksgiving. Kendra at the table. Kendra's parents behind her. And Marissa standing right beside them, arm around Kendra like they'd known each other forever. My mouth went dry. So this wasn't some stranger who showed up out of nowhere. This was someone from Kendra's world. Someone they already loved. Someone they brought in on purpose. I sat there staring at the screen, and one thought kept pushing through my grief. This didn't start at the funeral. It started long before Harold died. Then the doorbell rang. I jumped so hard I almost slammed the laptop shut. For half a second I thought it might be Kendra, coming to finish what she started. But when I opened the door, it was David. And what hit me wasn't just that he was here. It was how he looked. No hug. No, "Mom, I'm so sorry." He stood there with his keys still in his hand, eyes sharp, like he'd come to handle business. And before he even spoke, I understood something that made my stomach sink. He wasn't here to comfort me. He was here to get an answer. And when he finally opened his mouth, the first sentence told me exactly how deep this thing really went. David stepped inside like he wasn't visiting his mother. He was walking into a property. His eyes went to Harold's photo on the mantel, then down the hallway, then back to me, like he was measuring the house with his gaze. He looked tired, yes, but he also looked guarded, like he'd already rehearsed this conversation in the car. "Mom," he said, rubbing his palms on his jeans, "I'm sorry about what happened at the church." I didn't offer coffee. I didn't tell him to sit. I asked the only question that mattered. "Did you know Kendra was going to do that?" His mouth opened, closed again. He let out a slow breath. "She didn't tell me she was going to announce it like that," he said. "But yes, I knew she believed it." "Believed it," I repeated. "David, did you believe it?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "I don't know what to believe anymore." That hurt in a way I didn't have a name for. When you raise a child, you expect scraped knees, bad friends, heartbreak. You don't expect to look at your grown son and wonder if you need protection from him. I pointed toward the kitchen. "Sit." He sat at the same table where Harold used to read the newspaper, where David did homework, where I taught him to make grilled cheese without turning it into charcoal. He swallowed once, like he was working up courage. Then he said it. "Mom, we need to talk about the house." There it was. Not "I miss Dad," not "How are you surviving?" The house. He kept his voice gentle, careful. "Kendra says there's a will. She says there's a daughter. If it's true, it's not like you'd lose everything, but you want me to split it," I finished. He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Mom, please, just listen. Kendra's been stressed. We've been stressed. Things are not good right now." I didn't move. "Tell me." His shoulders sagged. "We're behind," he admitted. "Credit cards, the car payment. We borrowed from her parents. We're paying one thing with another. We're drowning." I stared at him, trying to line up this man with the boy I used to walk to school. "And the answer," I said slowly, "is to take half my home." The week I buried my husband. David's eyes shined. "It's not like that. You'd still live here. Nobody's trying to throw you out. I kept my voice low. Then why does your wife keep using words like owed? He looked away, and that told me plenty. I reached into my purse and pulled out Harold's note. I didn't trust leaving it on a counter where it could accidentally disappear. I placed it between us. David stared at it like it might bite. "Read it," I said. He unfolded it. I watched his face change line by line, jaw tightening, cheeks flushing, that swallowed panic rising in his throat. When he finished, he whispered, "Dad thought Kendra would do this." "He heard her," I said. He wrote it down. David blinked hard, like the room got too bright, and then I gave him the part that mattered most. "Your father had a vasectomy 33 years ago," I said, "after I almost died having your sister." David's head snapped up. "What?" I didn't soften it. 33 years. And we have medical proof it worked. That's in the papers, too. He sat back, stunned. He didn't argue. He didn't defend Kendra. He just looked embarrassed and scared. Then he said, "Kendra said Marissa can prove it. She said Marissa's mom has letters, pictures, something signed." My stomach turned, because lies always come dressed up like truth. They come with props. I leaned forward. "Where did Kendra meet Marissa?" His eyes flicked to mine, then away again. "Through her mom," he admitted. "They've known her a long time." Cold swept over my skin. "So Marissa isn't a secret your father hid," I said. "She's someone your wife brought in." David's voice cracked. "Mom, I didn't think she'd go this far. I thought it would just scare you into helping." And there it was. Not the truth about Marissa. The truth about my son. He thought fear would make me hand over my life like it was nothing. I stood up slowly, palms flat on the table. "David, I love you," I said. "I will always love you, but you need to hear me." He looked up, eyes wide now. "I am not signing away my home because your wife staged a story at a funeral luncheon." He started to speak. I lifted my hand. "Not yet." His mouth closed. "Because you haven't heard the part that should scare you more than debt," I said. He went still. "If that will is fake," I continued, "then this isn't stress. This is fraud. People get arrested for this." David's face drained of color. Very quietly he asked, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to ask Kendra for a meeting," I said. "With my attorney there. No games, no performance." He swallowed. "And if she won't?" "Then I'll know exactly what she is," I said, "and I'll know what you're willing to become to keep her." David stared at the table like it could save him, and that's when I heard tires outside. Not one car. Two. I walked to the front window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see. Kendra's car was in the driveway, and in the passenger seat was Marissa, already smiling like she belonged here. Kendra agreed to meet at my house the very next day, not because she grew a conscience, because she thought she still had the upper hand. She thought I was the kind of widow who would get tired, get overwhelmed, and sign whatever stopped the pressure. But by then, grief wasn't driving the wheel anymore. I was. Mr. Redding came early and sat with me at the dining room table. He checked Harold's real will, looked over the deed, and kept everything neat and simple, like we were setting a trap, not starting a fight. "Evelyn," he said, calm and steady, "speak slowly, ask short questions, let them fill the silence." Then he looked at me and added, "Do you want to record this conversation? If you do, we'll ask them on the spot, out loud." I nodded. My hands were steady now, not because I wasn't scared, because I was done being pushed. At exactly 3 p.m., a car door slammed outside. I glanced through the curtain, and my stomach tightened. Kendra wasn't alone. She walked up my steps in a crisp sweater and expensive boots, like she was heading into a meeting at the bank. Beside her was Marissa with a tote bag and a tight little smile that didn't reach her eyes. 2 against 1. That was the plan. I opened the door before they could knock. "Come in." Kendra's eyes slid past me into my living room, quick and greedy, like she was counting what she wanted. Marissa stayed half a step behind her, like a shadow that didn't want to be seen. Mr. Redding stepped forward. "Good afternoon. I'm Thomas Redding, Mrs. Harper's attorney." Kendra's face tightened, just a flicker. Then she snapped the polite smile back on. "Nice to meet you," she said, too sweet. We sat at the dining room table. Water glasses, papers stacked, quiet air. Mr. Redding looked at both of them. "Before we start, Mrs. Harper would like to record this meeting for accuracy. Do you both agree?" Kendra hesitated for half a second. Marissa glanced at Kendra like she was waiting for permission. Then Kendra said, "Fine." Marissa nodded. "Okay." Mr. Redding placed his phone down, screen up, and tapped record. The room felt smaller immediately. I looked at Marissa first, kept my voice gentle. "Marissa, I'm going to ask you something simple. Who told you Harold was your father?" Marissa blinked fast. "My mother." Mr. Redding tilted his head. "And your mother's name?" Marissa paused. "Denise?" Kendra jumped in too quickly. "Denise didn't want to come." "This is hard for her." Nobody asked Kendra that. I nodded once, slow. "All right." Then I turned to Kendra. "Kendra, please show Mr. Redding the will you brought to the church." Kendra reached into her folder like she'd been waiting for applause. She slid a paper across the table with a little flourish, like she was presenting a prize. Mr. Redding didn't react. He just read it quietly, eyes moving line by line. Then he asked, "Where was this signed?" Kendra's smile wobbled. "Signed?" "Yes," he said. "Where and when was it signed?" Kendra sat up straighter. "Harold did it privately." Mr. Redding nodded. "Okay. For a will to be valid in this state, it generally needs witnesses." "Who witnessed it?" Kendra's cheeks reddened. "He didn't use witnesses." Mr. Redding set the paper down gently. "And this signature," he said, tapping the bottom, "doesn't match the signature on Mrs. Harper's deed copy or the will I have on file." Kendra's mouth opened and closed again. Marissa's hands tightened around the straps of her tote bag. I leaned forward a little and looked at Marissa again. "Marissa, did you ever meet Harold? Even one time?" Marissa swallowed. "No." Kendra snapped, sharp now. "That doesn't mean anything." "People can have private situations." "It means a lot," I said, still calm. "Calm enough to cut. You're saying he was your father, but you never met him. Never called him, never sent a letter. And you chose the week of his funeral to show up asking for my house." Marissa's face shifted, confusion. Then worry, like she was finally realizing she wasn't the one steering this. Mr. Redding slid one page from our stack across the table toward Kendra. "A medical letter?" He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "This is a medical record confirming Mr. Harper had a vasectomy decades ago," he said, "and a follow-up report showing it was effective." Marissa went pale. "Kendra, what is that?" Kendra didn't look at Marissa. She stared at the paper like she wanted it to disappear. That's when I asked the question I'd been holding back since Harold's note. "Kendra," I said softly, "tell me the truth." She finally looked at me. "Who is we?" For the first time, her confidence slipped. Fear flashed across her face, quick but real. And right then, before she could answer, Marissa reached into her tote bag. She pulled out a manila envelope. Not wrinkled, not old, clean, prepared. She placed it on the table like she didn't want to hold it anymore and whispered, "Kendra's mom told me to bring this." Kendra's head snapped toward her. "Marissa." Marissa flinched. "She said it would..." "Finish it." I didn't touch the envelope. Neither did Kendra. Even Mr. Redding paused like the air had changed. Because suddenly it was clear. This wasn't a random lie told in grief. It was organized. Family organized. Mr. Redding opened the envelope slowly and looked inside. His face went still. Not shocked, not angry, just quiet in a way that scared me more than yelling. He pulled out the first page and stared at it for a long second. Then he lowered it just enough for me to see the top line. And my blood turned cold because it wasn't a letter. It was a form, with my name typed in, and a blank space waiting for one thing, my signature. Mr. Redding didn't tear that envelope open like a movie. He opened it slow, careful, like he expected something inside that could ruin a life. And I sat there with my hands folded, watching Kendra watch him, because I understood something in that moment. If this envelope was real, my life would get harder. But if it was fake, Kendra's life was about to. Mr. Redding slid the contents out and laid them on the table in neat rows. Right on top was the form I'd glimpsed, my name typed in, and a blank line waiting for my signature. Under that, 3 pages of letters, typed like someone was trying to write a love story, a photocopy of a birth record with Harold's name typed under father, and a grainy photo of a man near a car, like it was supposed to prove something. Kendra sat up straighter, like this was checkmate. Marissa let out a breath, like she'd been holding it all day. Then Mr. Redding adjusted his glasses, and the room got quiet in a different way. Not awkward quiet, danger quiet. He picked up the first letter and scanned it without changing his face. Then he set it down and said, Calm and flat. These are typed. And the signature at the bottom is not Mr. Harper's legal signature. Kendra scoffed. That's your opinion. Mr. Redding didn't even look at her. He reached into our stack and slid out a copy of Harold's real will. This is Harold Harper's signature, he said, tapping it once. This one is inconsistent. It appears copied. My throat tightened, because I knew that signature like I knew my own. Harold signed everything the same way for 42 years. Mr. Redding lifted the next page. And this is dated 1997. My heart gave a hard thump. 1997 was the year Harold worked double shifts at the plant. He came home exhausted, ate dinner half asleep, and went right back out before dawn. Mr. Redding kept going, steady as a metronome. The details in this letter also don't match his life history. The address is wrong, and the language doesn't fit his writing style. Kendra's smile started to slip at the edges. Marissa stared at the papers like they'd changed shape. Kendra, Marissa whispered, you told me this was real. Kendra didn't answer her. She kept her eyes on Mr. Redding like she could bully him with silence. He picked up the birth record next. He didn't rush. He didn't dramatize it. He just pointed. The font size changes here, he said. The alignment is off, and this is not what a certified record typically looks like. It appears altered. My hands went cold, not from fear, from rage, because they didn't just lie. They built props. They built proof. They wanted me to feel old, slow, and outnumbered. Mr. Redding set the papers down and finally looked directly at Kendra. His voice stayed even, but it got sharper. Presenting fabricated documents to claim an inheritance is serious. If you keep making these claims, my client can pursue legal action. Kendra's face flashed with panic, just for a second, then hardened into something ugly. This is ridiculous, she hissed. We're family. That word, family, came out like a threat. I turned to Marissa, kept my voice gentle, and asked the simplest question in the world. Marissa, who contacted you first? Marissa's eyes filled. She glanced at Kendra like she was asking permission to tell the truth. Then she said it anyway. Kendra's mom, she whispered. She messaged me online. She said your husband had unfinished business, and she said I could finally get what I deserved. Kendra snapped her head toward her. Why would you say that? Marissa's voice cracked. Because it's true. You all told me this was my chance, and suddenly it clicked so clearly it made me feel sick. Marissa wasn't the mastermind. She was bait. Kendra shoved her chair back so hard it scraped the floor. I'm done with this. Mr. Redding stayed seated. No, you're not done. Not if you intend to keep making claims against Mrs. Harper's estate. Kendra looked at me then, really looked. Her voice dropped low, almost sweet. Evelyn, if you just help us, we can all walk away. Don't make this worse. I stared back at her, steady. You already made it worse, I said. You brought fake papers into my home while I'm still burying my husband? Then I picked up my phone. Now I'm calling my son, I said. And he's going to hear this from me, not from you. Kendra's eyes flicked to the phone. Marissa started breathing fast, and just as my thumb hovered over David's name, I heard it. Keys, footsteps, the front door opening, and David's voice from the hallway. Mom? I looked up from the phone because I didn't have to call him anymore. He was already here. David arrived about 20 minutes later, rushing up my front steps like he thought he could outrun what he'd helped start. I opened the door before he knocked. Come in, I said. He walked into the dining room and stopped so suddenly his shoulders lifted, like his body braced for impact. Kendra stood near the table with her arms crossed, chin up like she still owned the room. Marissa sat stiff in her chair, eyes red like she'd been crying. Mr. Redding sat calm and quiet, hands folded, watching everyone like a referee. And across my table, spread, out in messy rows, were the typed letters, the altered record, the grainy photo, and that fake will. David stared at it all. His face went blank first, and then his eyes sharpened. What is this? He whispered. Kendra answered too fast, like she was scared of silence. It's proof. Your dad... Mr. Redding cut in, polite but firm. It appears to be fabricated, and I've advised Mrs. Harper not to discuss anything further unless it goes through the proper legal process. David swallowed hard. He picked up one of the letters and read 2 lines. Then he looked at Kendra like he didn't recognize her. Kendra, he said quietly, this isn't even his writing. Kendra's cheeks flushed. He could have typed... He didn't, David snapped louder now. He jabbed his finger at the bottom of the page. And that signature is wrong. I've watched Dad sign 1,000 things. Marissa's voice cracked. I didn't make any of this. David turned to her, confused. Then who did? Marissa wiped her face with the back of her hand. Kendra and Kendra's mom. They told me it was real. They told me everyone would understand. David blinked like his brain was refusing to catch up. Then he turned back to Kendra. Your mom is involved? Kendra's jaw tightened. She's helping. Because somebody has to. We're drowning, David. I saw my son flinch at that word because he knew it was true. But he also knew what they'd used as their life raft. He looked straight at her. How long have you been planning this? Kendra's eyes flashed. Planning? Don't act innocent. You wanted your mom to help. David shook his head hard. I wanted to ask her. Like a normal person. Not this. His voice broke on the last word, and for the first time, I saw guilt hit him full force. Kendra stepped closer to him, lowering her voice like she was trying to pull him back onto her side. David, listen. Your mom has the house. She's alone here. It's too big for her. We could move in, help her. No, I said. One word, that's all it took. All three of them looked at me. I stood up slowly and put my hands flat on the table, right beside those fake papers. This house is not a bargaining chip, I said. It is my home. And Harold is not a story you get to rewrite because you want a shortcut. Kendra narrowed her eyes. So you're just going to let your son struggle? David turned toward me, shame all over his face. Mom. I lifted my hand. No, let me finish. Then I looked at my son, and kept my voice steady. I will help you if you tell me the truth. All of it, right now. I paused. What did Kendra's mother promise you behind my back? David's shoulders dropped like something finally gave out. He said it so softly I almost didn't catch it. She said if we pushed hard enough, you'd sign something. She said widows get tired. His throat tightened. She said you'd want peace. The room went dead quiet. Even Kendra didn't talk because the trick had been said out loud. I turned to Mr. Redding. I want to cease and desist today, and I want to protect my property the legal way. New locks, cameras, whatever you recommend. Mr. Redding nodded once. We'll do that. Then I looked at Kendra. My voice got calm in a way that didn't leave any room to argue. You are not welcome in my home again, I said. And if you drag Marissa or anyone into another lie about my husband, I will stop protecting you from consequences. Kendra's face twisted. You wouldn't. I held her stare. Try me. For a second, nobody moved. Then Kendra grabbed her folder with shaking hands, turned on her heel, and walked out. Marissa followed her, slower, like she finally understood she'd been used. David stayed. He didn't chase his wife. He just stood there staring at the papers, breathing like he'd run a mile. And in that silence, I realized something simple and brutal. Grief can make you quiet, but it doesn't make you helpless. That night, I changed the locks. I installed cameras, and with Mr. Redding's help, I started the legal process to stop Kendra and anyone working with her from coming near my home again. David and I had a long talk, one he avoided for too long, and for the first time, he stopped protecting his wife's choices and started facing them. If you're watching this and you've ever felt pressured after a loss, please hear me. Don't sign anything when you're hurting. Slow everything down, get help, and trust your gut. Because sometimes the people counting on your silence are the same people who benefit from it.